በአሳታፊነት የሚንሸራሸርበት ቤት በሐሳብ ገበታችን ወቅታዊ፣ ማህበራዊ፣ ፖለቲካዊ እንዲሁም የህግ ጉዳዮች በስፋት በጥልቀትና በአካታችነት ይቀርባሉ። የሳምንቱ እንግዳም የሳምንቱ በተጋባዥ የማህበረሰብ አንቂዎች፣ ፖለቲከኞች እንዲሁም ሙያተኞች የሚቀርቡበት ፕሮግራም ወቅታዊ ጉዳይ ወቅታዊ ሀገራዊ ጉዳዮች የሚዳሰሱበት ዝግጅት የውይይትና የክርክር መድረክ በተለያየ ጎራ የሚገኙ ታላላቅ ፖለቲከኞች፣ የማህበረሰብ አንቂዎች እንዲሁም ሙያተኞች በሐሳብ ዙሪያ ፊት ለፊት የሚወያዩበት ከዛም አልፎ የሚሟገቱበት ፕሮግራም ህዝባዊ መድረክ በተለያዩ ጉዳዮች ላይ ሁሉም የሐሳብ ገበታ ቤተሰቦች በቀጥታ ሐሳባቸውን የሚያቀርቡበትና ተሳታፊ የሚሆኑበት ለቤተሰቦቻችን እድል የምንሰጥበት ጊዜም እነዚህና ሌሎች ሳምንታዊ ፕሮግራሞችን ለእናንተ እናቀርባለን። ይህንን የተወደደ ቻናል ሰብስክራይብ በማድረግ ቤተሰብ ይሁኑ፣ በስፋት ተደራሽ እንዲሁም ለሌሎች ያጋሩም። የሐሳብ ገበታው እንዲጠናከር በተሻለ ጥራትና ስፋት ወደ እናንተ እንዲደርስ በሐሳቦ በሙያውና በገንዘቡ ይደግፉን። የሐሳብ ገበታን በሱፐር ቻት፣ በሱፐር ታንክስና በሱፐር ስቲከር አጋርነቱን ያሳዩን። በጎፈንድሚ አማራጭ የሐሳብ ገበታን ያበረታቱ። ስለ ሐሳብ አስተያየቶ እንዲሁም ድጋፎም እናመሰግናለን። ዓላማችን የሐሳብ ማህበረሰብ መፍጠር ነው። የሐሳብ ገበታም
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Ethiopia Today podcast. Today we have a special guest who is the regular commentator and a political analyst on the issues surrounding the Horn of Africa, including Ethiopia, over the last 2 years. I hope we will reestablish the connection. We lost our guest, but anyways, so we apologize for the internet interruption, and I hope that we will have a better connectivity throughout our discussion. Our guest today is Mr. Sajid Nadeem from Pakistan, who has a YouTube channel entitled My Views on News, when he mainly reflects on the Ethiopian politics, usually domestic politics, and sometimes on the Horn of Africa. And with that, I welcome you all, and I will be back with my guest as soon as possible. It is just simply internet connectivity. Let's see if it is getting better now. All right. I think you are back, Mr. Sajid. Is it working now? Can you hear me? Oh. Are you there, Mr. Sajid? Well, we will try our best again and give a shot. Mr. Sajid has one of the most reliable source of information currently on the Ethiopian politics. Some people describes him as one of the impartial commentator on the Ethiopian politics, including the Ethio-Eritrean relationship. So we will see if the internet will serve us better. But unfortunately, we started off with a lot of interruptions. Let's see if it is going to work. So stay with us. And if you have questions, concerns, and suggestions, please leave it in the comment section on YouTube. And I will redirect it directly to Mr. Sajid. Oh. Yeah, so it seems that hopefully we will get the substantial information and unbiased discussion, only and if only internet is going to work. Hello? Are you there, Mr. Sajid? Can you hear me? Hello? Yeah. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Then if not, I will give you a call on WhatsApp and see. We must apologize to our fans and followers for this unfortunate event, but we will try via call if it is not working this way. So I'm going to give him a call, possibly through a WhatsApp call, and try our best. So I will ask him a very specific and short questions, and then, yeah. አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን ከኛ ጋር ቆዩ። በኢንተርኔት ምክንያት ነው እየታገልን ያለ ነው። ከሰራ እናያለን። እስቲ ሄሎ what is really happening today? Hello, Sajid. Maybe can you turn off your video and try the audio version? Hello? Yeah. Can you hear me now? If you can hear me, you may turn off your camera, your video, and then we'll try the audio version.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me, Mr. Mohammed?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Apologies from me, internet problem here. I'm trying to get it back on track, but it's created some problems here.
So we are going to do two things just as a backup plan. And if it is not working, we may turn off the camera and try it later on. For now, we just proceed as it is. And if not, in the worst case scenario, I will give you a call on WhatsApp, and then I will ask you a question and you will respond briefly. That will be our backup plan. Is that okay for you?
Okay.
All right. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you the first question, which is a bit setting the ground for our discussion, which is personally, I assume that you have never been to Ethiopia. If that is the case, how did you start reporting about Ethiopia and Ethiopian politics? And a couple of years ago, or previously, you were reporting about Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict, right? So how did you start reporting about Ethiopia? What is a particular moment or a prompting situation for you? Can we start with that?
Firstly, thank you, Mr. Bogus, for inviting me. I know that what you're doing is commendable. Your work is different from other Ethiopian news outlets.
I think you are gone again. So we have got to try plan B. You were cut off for 30 seconds.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. So I heard you saying that my way of doing news is different from the other outlets.
Yeah. I see quality reporting and valuable work on this channel. Thank you for inviting me. And a warm welcome to all the viewers who have joined this session. Thank you for joining. You asked about how I came to cover Ethiopia. How did I start covering Ethiopia? Well,
Yes.
I was interested in covering international conflicts. That is how I started. I covered Libyan civil war, Turkey-Syria war, to some extent conflicts in the Middle East too, Iran, Israel conflict, Israel-Palestine conflict, little bit of Afghanistan too, and then Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict. I remember that the day that conflict, that war ended between the two countries, after that war broke out between Tigray forces and Ethiopian federal forces. So that war took me to Ethiopia. I was interested in covering wars. And then in Ethiopia, one after the other, conflicts continued. So that is how I became involved in covering Ethiopia. And the Ethiopian civil war had different angles. Political angle, security angle, to some extent religious angle, then intervention of other countries too. So I had to study, I had to conduct research, and I tried to learn about the different aspects of Ethiopian conflict, of the general situation in the Horn of Africa. So that is how I started covering Ethiopia. And since there is no end to conflicts in this region, so I thought I would move or to other conflicts, to other places. But there is so much happening in this region that it's almost impossible to cover it. That is why I could not move on. I'm still here.
That's an excellent way of putting it. So then, how did you find the reception of the people? How did they receive you? I mean, both Ethiopian people as well as Eritreans. I would imagine that your followers are from the greater Horn of Africa, not only Ethiopia. Since you do it in English, the rare exceptions actually. The vast majority of the people, including myself, do it in the official language, be it in Amharic or in Tigrinya or in Somali. So you have followers from Somali, because I'm also one of your followers. I see the comments and the people asking you. Some of them are from Eritrea, even a bit from Sudan, even though the vast majority of them are from Ethiopia. So how did you see the reception of the people?
Well, firstly, the viewership is from across the world, from Europe, America, then Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia too. Reception, there is need for news outlets to cover Ethiopia and Eritrea in an impartial, unbiased manner. Yes, some people criticize, saying that an outsider does not know, who has never been to Ethiopia, does not know what is happening in these countries. They criticize, but I would say majority of viewers, they back me, they support me, they provide information to me, they make corrections, they share updates. So I will talk about majority. Majority has been very responsive, very, very positive. And this majority helped me build my views and news with 74K almost subscribers. It is people, the viewers who helped me. They, I think, welcomed me. I was an outsider. I learned from viewers. I learned from people who stay in touch with me. So I'm thankful to them. And I think without viewers, there is no My Views and News. There is no Sajid. So reception has been wonderful, I think.
All right, that's great to hear. I think this is your official channel, so that our followers also need to know what they may already know. Some of them, we have a common viewers as well. So it is My Views on News, which is around 74.1 subscribers, right? So you guys can see it here, up here, with around 4.8 K videos, right? More than 4,800 videos published so far. So I would invite each and every one of you on my channel to subscribe, follow him, and if you have questions and compliments, please do so, because I believe that this is one of, I mean, relatively speaking, one of the impartial news outlets on Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa. I'm not saying that to flatter you. It's just because I've been following you for the last 2 years. That being said, we'll get back to your channel once more. So the follow-up question, which you have partly touched upon, is that without information, right, without someone supplying you or directing you or giving you information, it would have been very, very difficult for you to provide impartial, credible, well-informed analysis, right, as we already pointed out. So who are your sources of information? Of course, I'm not saying to reveal the confidential sources, but generally saying, who are the actors who are providing you with up-to-date information? Because usually you are ahead of even most Ethiopian news outlets, including myself. So can you reflect on that, Sajid?
Thank you for your comments about the channel. People give information to me. I said there is need for impartial news outlets to cover Ethiopia. There is this vacuum, I believe. There should be more channels, more English news channels, local language channels. There is this vacuum, I think. And to some extent, I filled in this vacuum partially. I have no problem getting information. People from all walks of life are in touch with me. Starting from the highest tier, people in top positions outside Ethiopia, people in international organizations, people on the ground. And one of the reasons behind that is that I am in touch with the viewers on my email, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Telegram. I'm always available. Whenever people contact me, I respond. I don't think I have left any email unanswered so far. So, and then whenever I get information, I always try to verify it from multiple sources. And by the way, so much is coming in social media that getting information is not a problem. Problem is how to share the right information, how to verify it, how to verify it from multiple sides. For example, if I get information about something which happened in Valaga, I must get it from both sides. I must get what is the position of Oromos living there, Ola, and Oromia government, and what about the position taken by Amharas living there? So the best thing is that I am in touch with people from all sides. Some are in Ethiopia, some are outside Ethiopia, some could be part of the government too. Those who are part of the government, they want their official narrative to be represented as well. They contact me, they share statements with me. And those who are not part of the government, obviously they are activists, they're from opposition too. But gradually, I have managed to build a team of those people who believe in sharing the right information, impartial information. This is an unofficial team, you can say, but I have no problem getting translations from Amharic, from Somali, from Afan Oromo, from any language. In minutes, I can get all the translation from multiple sources, and then I can compare it. And I think I have developed some good ties with people who help me and who are impartial and who believe that we should work impartially to cover Ethiopia. As
Yeah.
I said, yeah.
Yeah, I really agree with you that these days, with the revolution of digital or social media, it is not the lack of information. It's actually the paradox of the plenty, as I say. It is a paradox that we have a lot, quite a lot. And with that comes the triple pathology of disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. So, but then verification is by its very nature very difficult in the Ethiopian context. Among others, the first one is that we have irreconcilable narratives for two reasons. One, because of ethnic divisions. Two, because of the nature of the civil war, because it is in the context of war. So how could you come up with an impartial and credible news and analysis where almost there won't be any dominant common public space? Because I think these days we do not have a public space where we can agree on any issues, especially when it comes to political matters. So that would be my follow-up question, if you can say a bit on that, because there are some people who charges you that you are reporting more about Eritrea and Oromo opposition leaders than the Ethiopian case or the Amhara and other groups. What would you say?
Well, it's very simple. By sharing impartial information, I mean that we should give equal coverage to the position of all parties. If something happens in an area of Ethiopia, as you said, definitely people would see it differently. Different groups would see it differently, politically, ethnically. But by sharing impartial information means that we should share the position of all the groups. And then we can conclude as well. Conclusion is up to the presenter, but at least he should ensure that all parties' positions are reflected in the talk, in the presentation. Problem is that sometimes we only rely on one side. We share one party's position, whether it is exaggerated or incorrect, we only focus on that. We should give equal time, equal coverage. That is what I mean by impartial information sharing. And your question, and you talked about that I give more coverage to Tigray Oromo. Main coverage in the last 2 years was definitely Tigray war. Main coverage was on my views and news was Tigray war. So that is why it was bound to be about the movement of Tigray Defense Force or the movement of Ethiopian National Defense Force. And after that, there was some activity of Ola. But if you see my videos these days, I am more focused on what is happening in Amhara, because now the most challenging development for the government and the most important development is what is happening in Amhara. And now people say, Sajid, you turned pro Fano, you support Fano, you just advocate for Fano. Problem is that when there was war in Tigray, we were focused on sharing what was happening in Tigray. Now we should focus on Amhara. Why? Amhara, and to some extent in Oromia, what is happening there too. Main conflict is in Amhara, which is going to have regional, national, regional in the region consequences. So I think the reporting varies, keeping in view the type of conflict and where the conflict is, where the issues are.
Yeah. So basically, instead of following groups or ethnic identities or position, you follow the news itself, the conflict itself, right? 3 years ago, not 3 years ago, until very recently, until the gun was relatively silent in the northern part of Ethiopia, in Tigray. You were reporting predominantly, obviously, by following the conflict pattern, right? So now the conflict is in Amara, and the reason I'm sharing your own official YouTube is that if we see your recent report, you see here, the first video is about Ola, then there is an Ethiopia-Eritrea relationship, there is Ago here, there is Fano, and then Fano, and again, the issue of Sudan. I'm just trying to show our audiences how varied and the kind of balanced they are in terms of news coverage. So if your audiences and those people who are watching us now go and do their own statistics or just basic observations, you have been reporting on various issues and the stakeholders in this regard. That's what I'm trying to show, Sajid. So you are right. And that said, then let's talk about the current leadership of Ethiopia, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed. So because we cannot simply avoid the white elephant in our room. How do you see his leadership? Where did we get it wrong? I know that you started reporting only about Ethiopia 3 years ago, but as a critical student of Ethiopian politics, you might have dealt with the structural issues over the last 4 or 5 years by now. Where did we got it wrong? And how do you see the leadership of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed? Because most people say, some people say that you are not so critical of his leadership. What is your view on that?
Well, we can judge the Prime Minister of Ethiopia on the slogans on which he came. What were the dreams of people when Ethiopian PM Abiy came to power? What did he promise? And why did he come to power, by the way? Why did he take office? Why was there need for a new government? Obviously, there was frustration, protests, EPRDF had to go, and people wanted change. They wanted something new. They wanted end to conflicts. They wanted democratic reforms. They wanted a system in which people are important. They wanted a system in which there is no corruption. So that is why he came to power, because people believe there should be something new, respect for human rights. A lot was promised. And I think when he started, his start was not bad, by the way. He made peace with Eritrea. The church, was split. The patriarch was in exile. He came back. People like Brano, Naga, others who had been fighting the TPLF, they came back. So an era of reconciliation started. We cannot deny that. There were hopes that maybe internally and externally a new era is beginning. That hope, that dream of a new Ethiopia could not materialize. Rather, Ethiopia plunged into a war. And you say I tilt towards support for Abiy, but in my assessment about Tigray war, I always blamed government more than TPLF. Though I always say it takes two to tango, but obviously government was more responsible. Preparations were going on. TPLF. So the dreams shattered gradually, one after the other. The promises. Parties were nowhere to be seen. Opposition has been crushed, you can say. Even those who are part of the government, they're not allowed to speak freely. What happened to Dandia? The other Minister of Peace, Siam Masfan, fled the country. And then the conflict in Amhara mishandled. I have been speaking a lot, by the way, about the shortcomings, the mistakes made by PM Abiy's government. I think there are serious problems which PM Abiy's government could not handle. The era of change could not materialize, and obviously who is responsible? The man, uh, Prosperity Party, and the man who's leading the Prosperity Party.
That's great. So do you really think that, I'm just picking on the last statement you have made, do you think that Abiy and his Prosperity Party can be salvaged in one way or another, and then they can turn around the tide and save the country? Do you have any hopes that there is a possibility of salvaging him or his party?
Prosperity Party alone cannot bring about change in Ethiopia. I say Ethiopia needs a broader engagement with involvement of all players. All players means Prosperity Party, opposition parties, armed factions, other players, maybe church as well. Ethiopia needs a new roadmap. Question is the Prosperity Party ready to give is it ready to accommodate opposition parties and other pillars which are required to build a democratic Ethiopia? Is it ready? No. No big change in terms of how government is being run, how the state affairs are being run. So I don't see any big change coming as long as Prosperity Party does not change its ways. It will have to involve other players. National Dialogue Commission is not the way forward, which was established more than a year ago. Nothing has happened so far. Ethiopia needs a broader internal reconciliation with all the parties on board, which is not happening. So that is why no success likely in terms of big change in the country.
Yeah, I might add just one point on that it is not only readiness, but also capability. So it's not whether the Prosperity Party is willing to accommodate others, but also whether it is even capable of handling the shock itself. So it is two, willingness and ability as well. So do you agree with that? Internal coherence, party structure, philosophy, strategy, all those.
Yeah, willingness to some extent is linked to capability too, but willingness is more important, I think. If there is willingness, maybe capability can improve, but problem is that are there real intentions behind building a new democratic Ethiopia? Is Prosperity Party sincere? Does PM Abiy want to build a society which is democratic and where there are equal opportunities, where all groups have equal rights, where there's respect for fundamental rights? Is he prepared? Is he willing? Then we can talk about the capability as well. I think that Abiy's government wants to consolidate power around Prosperity Party. It is not ready to accommodate others.
That's great. Great way to view it. So let's move in. You have already touched upon a lot of crises. Among them, there have been crises in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, right? There was a crisis in the Muslim quarter as well, but we focus on the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. There was a division a year ago, and you are well aware of it, and it hasn't ended yet. And I think the political division or nationalism somehow, ethnic nationalism somehow also had an impact on the social fabric, which is the religious institutions. So we have a separate structure in Tigray now, and the situation in Oromia has not been fully addressed as well. What do you think is the main problem from your point of view, and what was the role of Abiy's regime in dividing actually or weakening the strong Ethiopian Orthodox Church?
Well, firstly, I think the church has been influenced by political developments. When there were political change in Ethiopia, there were changes in church as well. Like when EPRDF came to power, I think the patriarch back then had to go into exile, Abune Mercurius, I think. And then when there was next big change in 2018, PMRB came to power, we saw another change that Abune Mercurius returned to Ethiopia and he and Abune Matthias worked together. So political developments are linked to religious developments, Orthodox developments to some extent. Firstly. Secondly, yes, you're right that the church is faced with challenges. Challenge from Tigray, challenge from Oromia. You talked about the Abiy government's role in promoting divisions. By the way, when Abiy started, he brought back the patriarch who was in exile. So he takes credit that he tried to create unity. And by the way, he mediated between the Oromia region-based archbishops and the main church too. I think Pimabi and then Daniel Kibbet, others, they went to the church headquarters in Addis Ababa and some agreement was signed there. So on the face of it, he can say that he has been promoting unity in the church. Problem is that church will have to disassociate itself from politics. If church is involved or if it is seen as involved in politics, it means there will always be splits. What role did church play in the 2-year-long war? Some archbishops were supporting the war, but the patriarchs, we saw his leaked videos. He was condemning the war. He was calling it genocide. There were internal splits in the church about the war. Now, church is faced with a bigger crisis. Let me speak about that. Now, the Orthodox Church draws its main strength, I think, from the Amhara region, from Addis Ababa. And Amhara region is now seriously destabilized, where government says that churches, monasteries are being used by Fano fighters. Church now is in a difficult position. How to be neutral in the conflict in Amhara region? Government is indirectly accusing the church that church premises are being used by Fano fighters. Church has not condemned that. I have not heard any condemnation from church of the use of its premises by Fano fighters.
Except for Abuna Ermias, who vocally and publicly.
Yeah. I was going to. Abuna Ermias spoke, and we then saw a barrage of criticism against the man, but the man did speak. You're right. Overall, I think church is now faced with a new crisis. The crisis you mentioned about Tigray, Amhara, the crisis as well, but this crisis is the most important one. How can church stay neutral in what is happening in the Amhara region so that it continues having Amhara region as its support base while its ties with the government also remains good? On the whole, church will have to disassociate itself from politics, from ethnicity, and it will have to take a position which is for the sake of all Ethiopians, for the sake of all ethnic groups, keeping aside the differences. I heard a few days ago that church announced to appoint a representative in peace talks. That if peace talks are held, church should be part of the conflict resolution. It was a bit surprising for me. No one wanted church to mediate. I did not hear from the government to asking the church to mediate. Church should disassociate itself from politics. That is the way forward. Otherwise, church will remain controversial.
Yeah. Great. So, related to this, based on your sources of information and the widespread reporting over the last 3 years, and even now, you might have come across that the Amhara and Orthodox followers have been targeted in other parts of Ethiopia, including Oromia. So why are they targeted in your view, in your analysis, and who are the perpetrators, who are behind them? Because if you talk to the Ola, they always say that we need independent investigation. That is their standard response, and the government is blaming the Ola. But the victims, the fact remains, the victims are mainly the Amhara ethnic group or the Orthodox followers. And do you have any views on that?
Yeah, I agree that Amharas are being displaced from Valaga. They died in some massacres, dying. We cannot deny that. I reported that too in multiple videos. Who is killing them? Who is displacing them? There are several angles to understanding what is happening in Valaga. It's not just Ola, by the way. There is one Ola led by Tumsa Dereba. There is an Ola led by Fikad Abdisa. There is Gichana Serna, government-backed militia. There are Oromia regional forces. There is Ethiopian National Defense Force, and there are armed Amharas as well. By the way, a relatively new development, but we know that now Amharas are arming themselves. Why? Because they say that they are being attacked, they are being killed. So how to defend themselves? They say that government is not helping them. Oromia government forces sometimes withdraw from the areas where massacres happen. So how will they protect themselves? They're arming themselves. This arming of people in Valaga is another issue. Then religious angle as well, that Orthodox Christians and Muslims as well, by the way, not just Orthodox people. Those who are displaced, I think Muslim are there too. Several angles, but I can conclude by saying that this conflict in Valaga is part of the larger conflict between the two sides. And that is the fight for dominance in Ethiopia. Fight for dominance between the Oromos and Amhara ruling elites. They are in this fight perhaps more involved now because the third party, TPLF, Tigray, now restricted to Tigray only. So what is happening in Valaga is manifestation of fight for power between the two sides. Both want greater power, domination in Ethiopian politics. Oromia, a regional government, in the end is to blame. Where are Amhara people living in Valaga? In Oromia. But Oromia government has failed to protect Amharas. That is why they are arming themselves. So whether Ola is killing them, Fikad Desa is killing them, Gichana Serna is killing them, who is to blame? The government. Government, and by the way, who is in power in Oromia? Prosperity Party. Who is in power in Amhara? Prosperity Party. So have you heard from the Amhara Prosperity Party taking a very strong position against Oromia Prosperity Party? No. Why is that? That the Prosperity Party in both regions does not care about these large-scale deaths. Only opposition groups in Amhara, they raise this issue. But Amhara Prosperity Party is enjoying the benefits of being in power. So in the end, the Prosperity Party in Amhara, the Prosperity Party in Oromia, federal government, all are to blame. And when you talk about investigations, which investigation in Ethiopia has led to accountability? How many were killed in Tigray? Anyone held accountable? How many are being killed in Amhara these days? Strikes, etc. Anyone being held accountable? So we don't expect any investigation to identify perpetrators, but pressure should be exerted on the governments. In the end, they are to be held accountable and they are to blame.
All right, thank you. So you have already mentioned that the Amharas have been arming themselves and actually fighting against the government and what they see is the existential threat against the very existence of the Amhara people collectively. That is the official narrative of the fighters. And then some people say that no, things have turned ugly following the signing of the Pretoria Agreement. They are saying that that was a game changer. So do you think that the Amhara cause predates the Pretoria Agreement, or it is only started by the signing of the Pretoria Agreement? And do you do that dichotomy, or do you see that, as you say, it is a complex issue?
Well, Pretoria deal was obviously welcomed by Prosperity Party. It negotiated the deal. So if you talk about Amhara PP was behind the deal to some extent, but not all the groups in the Amhara region backed Pretoria deal. Eritrea remained silent about Pretoria deal, but we cannot say that Eritrea was there in talks at Pretoria. Eritrea did not negotiate, but it accepted the deal to some extent. Same happened in Amhara, that Amhara region to some extent accepted the deal. But it was hoping, the groups in Amhara, they were hoping that deal would be implemented, that Tigray forces would be disarmed, demobilized, and that Volkayat Mersagede Kora Melamata will stay under Amhara control. I think relations between Abiy and Amhara groups deteriorated when Abiy government did not implement Pretoria fully, and when Abiy decided to disband Amhara Special Force. Though we know that last year Abiy government decided to launch a crackdown on Fano groups, and last year a campaign to disband Fano started, and it was last year when Zabina Kasi, Masri Shah went into hiding. Other Fano commanders also went into hiding. So last year, only that Wallo Fano commander was allowed to operate freely, Mere Bodajo, because he was used in third round of fighting against Tigray forces. But after third round of fighting, after Pretoria deal, even he turned against the government. Government wanted to completely disband armed groups in the Amhara region. And maybe government wanted to do that because it was planning to make big decision about the future status of Volkai, the Kora Melamat. That is why government disbanded Amhara Special Force. That was the turning point, I think, in the start of resistance movement in the Amhara region. Tens of thousands of ASM members joined Fano fighters, and a new movement started in the Amhara region. So I would say that those groups which are fighting against the government now were not happy with Pretoria, but they accepted it, hoping it would be implemented. Pretoria not implemented, and then government decided to make some decisions, to take some steps about the future status of West and Southern Zone, and that led to start of the major rift between the two sides. And then you saw that resistance movement or movement started in the Amhara region.
Yeah, Sajid, I agree with you that it compounded the situation, and it served as a triggering point to fight against the government, or to turn an ally against its own former ally to be an enemy. So far, so good. But then we will encounter one problem, one dilemma. If we say that the Amhara groups started fighting, particularly the Fano, started fighting against Abiy, its own former partner, just a year ago, then it may not go in line with the narrative of existential threat. Because if you say existential threat, it means that it is structural. It has been there. Amhara has been targeted, as we have discussed, in Oromia and other parts of the country, including the constitutional framework. So don't you see a contradiction? If we take Pretoria as a starting point, then the narrative of existential threat would serve no value at all. Do you see that?
You're right. You're right that several things led to what is happening now in the Amhara region in terms of resistance movement. What is happening in Valaga, obviously one of the reasons. Pretoria, another reason. Then government's decisions about disbandment of ASF, government's likely decisions about future status of Alamantarpura. And then we must not forget that Eritrea Amhara allies. We have not touched on that, by the way. If you analyze the post-Pretoria period, when Ethiopia election deliberated, same happened between Amhara groups and Ethiopian when Ethiopian government, Eritrean governments were allies, Amharas were there too, Amhara groups, Amhara PP, all were there. And a broad alliance was against TPLF, TDF. But when Abiy and Isas drifted apart, at the same time, Amhara groups and Abiy government drifted apart. And I'm not saying that Isas Avok is actively backing Fano fighters, he's providing weapons to Fano fighters. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that internal, external factors have led to the situation now. Now, perhaps Eritrea is a more reliable ally for groups in Amhara than the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. Removal of PM Abiy is the stated goal of Fano fighters. And the groups based in Amhara, they publicly opposed a war on Eritrea for access to the Red Sea. The same groups have been accusing Meles Zenawi for years. The Meles Zenawi gave Assad to Eritrea. So things are changing internally, externally. Several factors have led to what is happening in the Amhara region. But I think that Ethiopians should resolve their problems on their own. If you involve external parties, if you hope that external players would help you, would rescue you, they will compound the problems, they will create more problems. So in the end, solutions should come in Ethiopia with involvement of Ethiopian parties. Outsiders' influence is going to destabilize Ethiopia.
All right, fair enough. So let's move on to the situation of economy and the humanitarian crisis, Sajid, because we haven't discussed about that. So you observe that PM Abiy has been building maybe perhaps one of the largest and the most expensive palace in the world, at the same time while the economy is crumbling and part of Ethiopia, particularly Tigray, is starving. And when I say that, because there is a news, a press release from the interim regional government of Tigray, where they said that the Tigray people, 91% of the Tigray people are facing starvation. And you can see here on the screen, it says a statement on the unfolding famine in Tigray. It is from the Office of the President. And it was released today in the morning. And the assessment, the language used, and the call for help is very demanding and so painful. And imagine 91% of the Tigrayan people are on the verge of famine. That is how they expressed it. So how do you see that? The Prime Minister building a palace, the most expansive and expensive palace. The economy, 3 days ago, we are officially one of the defaulting nations in the world, only next to, I think, Ghana and Zambia. So how do you make sense of this this situation, the humanitarian disaster and the crumbling economy on the one side, and the Prime Minister's vanity project in the capital, in Addis?
Yeah, I have been speaking about this project Palace, this Palace project. What is the source of funding? No one knows, by the way. How much is going to be spent? No one clearly knows. From where is this money coming? From UAE, from European countries? What is the agenda of those players? Obviously, Abiy has not billions of birds. So money is coming from somewhere. Those who are spending, they have their agendas. That is why, while the project is being opposed by Ethiopians who see people dying in front of their eyes, they should demand accountability. They should ask the government to share sources of funding. From where is this money coming from? And by the way, uh, it's not just Palace project. I think Oromia government is also building a similar project. Prosperity Party built a new headquarter a few months ago, and we saw an Ethiopian National Defense Force headquarter built as well. What about the Kinji drones, by the way? Just newly bought by Ethiopia, while people are dying. Ethiopia already has very modern combat drones, Winglongs, TB2s. There was no need. But I talk about priorities. Government's priorities are not right. That is what I've been saying. You mentioned the famine in Tigray. Firstly, there is a debate, a disagreement between Tigray and federal government.
By the way,
Federal
when I say Tigray, I said mostly, particularly, and there is also a problem in part of Somalia and Amhara. But for now, I was focusing on the latter. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh, Federal government and Tigray government both are in disagreement about famine. The federal government representative a few weeks ago rejected the news about famine. He said there is no famine, drought-like situation. And some groups in Amhara, in Tigray are sharing wrong information. So federal government is reluctant to acknowledge that famine is there, firstly. Secondly, Tigray, yes, what is happening in Tigray and in Amhara as well, by the way, as you said, famine is not just in Tigray, in Amhara, other parts of Ethiopia as well. People are dying there. The regional authorities have confirmed, and a lot needs to be done. I think WHO spoke as well a few days ago about that famine. Is Tigray government focused on handling this crisis? What has been Tigray government doing, by the way, for the last 2 months? They have been in a meeting. Tigray interim government, TPLF, Tigray military commanders, all have been at a meeting for weeks. What was the agenda? Was top item on agenda famine? No. Priorities. Priorities of federal government? Not right. Same is happening in Tigray. A statement issued now, but for the last 4 to 5 weeks, more than that, Tigray government and TPLF have been meeting, long discussions about TPLF interim government relations. So these priorities should be corrected in Tigray too. And by the way, Tigray government does not have the capability to put an end to famine. It needs support of federal government. And how will federal government support? It wants to focus on building a modern, advanced army with all types of advanced weapons. Yes, Ethiopia has every right to build a strong army, but not at the cost of people who are losing their lives. Priorities are not right. People are suffering both in Tigray and other parts of Ethiopia. What is needed is that international community should uh, put pressure upon the two sides. The Tigray government to Ethiopian federal government too. There should be restrictions on the federal government. How can it spend so much on military while people are dying of hunger? And there should be some, maybe medicine will prevail in Tigray, but so far they're involved in fighting. Can they focus on putting an end to famine? Let's see. But so far we know that even that demobilization, reintegration has not happened. But tens of thousands of PDF members still waiting. They were promised they'll be given jobs, they'll be given employment. They are still there. They were given nothing, just a few thousand birrs, and they're on their own. So a lot needs to be done, but for that you need to correct priorities, which is not happening.
Right, I can't agree more on that. So let's move to the next question. Whenever we talk about cooperation between the people or even political parties or build some form of alliances across ethnic and religious divides, one of the issues which comes to your mind over the last 3 years, as you have been reporting about, is the Wolkite and Raya issue between Amhara and the Tigray community. You have kind of similar, it's not similar, but analogically, you have a kind of deadlock in Kashmir, right? Do you see that analogy best describes the situation? Because every issue, every case is different. I know that as a political science student. But do you draw any analogy from that? And do you think that despite this sticking point between Amhara and Tigray, there would be the room for cooperation? And what do you suggest to resolve that deadlock?
Analogy maybe might not be 100% correct, because Kashmir is interstate dispute, and I think it's on UN forum too. Some resolutions were passed 2 decades ago. Wolkite issue, internal issue in a country, not raised on international level. But some aspects could be similar. What is the solution? I remember that almost 2 years ago, I proposed that there should be a solution for dispute over Wolkite, which is mutually agreed. And it can happen. By the way, both sides are very sensitive, very committed to their positions about Wolkite. Amhara says Wolkite is Amhara. Their slogan is Wolkite is Amhara. Tigray says that it wants its territories back. Basically, positions are not reconcilable. But for a better Ethiopia, for better neighborly relations, there must be some give and take. Joint administration of the region I proposed 2 years ago, but both sides criticized me, saying, Sajid, you don't know anything about Ethiopian affairs. You have no right to propose something.
By the way, I propose similar stuff just for fun. Then they say exactly the same thing. They say that I have no clue about what is going on in that area, even though I am from Ethiopia and a student of international law as well as international politics. So, so don't be surprised. They say the same thing to you. They even say the same thing to the people next door, as long as it is not supporting their position.
And I think even a beginner can understand that the way forward is negotiation, a mutually agreed bilateral agreement. It can happen. Obviously, Tigray needs access. Tigray wants at least one international border. It is not comfortable with Eritrea only, because Eritrea are hostile towards Tigray, vice versa as well. Amhara, obviously, they don't want to lose Wolkite too, very fertile area, and connection with Eritrea too. This is the only connection between groups in Amhara and Wolkite. So I think there should be some give and take. That is the way forward. But you raised a very important point. You said that can there be an engagement between the two sides while issue is still there, dispute still there? There should be spirit, I think. Spirit should be that the two sides should engage in talks. Solution can come at the table. Fano fighters a few days ago released prisoners from Dangala prison center. and there were Tigrayans, Tigranian-speaking ENDF members. They contacted their families, they freed them, they treated them well, and Tigranian-speaking members were all praised for Fano. So it was a gesture of goodwill from Fano fighters. But to say that there is likelihood of an engagement between the two sides, so far it's not happening, but I strongly suggest it should happen. Talks should start, public talks. I think they have met, by the way. PM Abiy mediated some meetings between Amhara leaders and Tigray leaders too. That was on PP level mostly. It happened. But you need public discussion with involvement of all players. And we must not forget that armed groups are now players in the Amhara region. You cannot make big decisions without taking them on board. Like Ola is a player in the Oromia region.
Are you there, Sajid? Oh, yeah, now you are back. Yeah, just 10-second glitch. Yeah, you were talking about Ola.
Yes, I was saying that public talks should be had about the future status of Raya, Volkai, Thumera Sagade, with involvement of all players. Talks have been held, confidential talks. What was agreed, no one knows. We hear that TPLF agreed to holding of referendum, but now TPLF seems to be rejecting that referendum. That is what happens when talks are held in secret. So I believe for lasting peace, there should be public discussion with involvement of all parties about the future status of Western and Southern zones.
Yeah, so basically it is going to be, you're suggesting a multi-stakeholder participation, a grassroots people-to-people relationship, political parties, groups. So every relevant or pertinent stakeholders who have an interest must participate in that. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. I would prefer the local turn, which is a bottom-up, because that is going to be sustainable. At the end of the day, they are the people who are going to share the land and the peace. I mean, the dividend of peace would be for all. Yeah, this is a very sticking and complex issue, but I just wanted to know your view on that. So let's move to the last point now. Now let's zoom out on the regional issue and ask you one pertinent question, which is, what is the interest of the UAE and other Gulf states in Ethiopia? Do you see there will be a war between Eritrea and Ethiopia in the near future? So they are a related question. First, what is the interest of the UAE and the Gulf states in the region as well as in Ethiopia? And is there a possibility of war breaking out between Eritrea and Ethiopia anytime soon? Because there is a war rhetoric a couple of months ago, and then that subsided down, and there was a reframing from the Prime Minister Abiy. But the issue of access to the port and the seas is still on the table. So what do you see?
Well, how many are military bases? How many military bases are in Djibouti? 4 military bases. Several. US there, UK there, some other countries too. What are their interests there? They want to be here because the region is very strategic in terms of a busy commercial shipping route here. UAE wants to be here as well. UAE was in Djibouti, kicked out from there. It was in Eritrea, not there anymore. UAE wants to have its presence in this region. And by the way, Mohammed bin Zayed is known for having regional ambitions. He intervened in Libya, if you remember. He supported Libyan National Army there. I remember when I was covering Turkey-Greece conflict. there was a short conflict for a few days between the two countries. Back then, Mohammed bin Zayed sent F-16 fighter jets to Greece to show solidarity with Greece against Turkey. Mohammed bin Zayed is known for having a regional ambitions. He sees UAE as a regional player. So it should have its presence in the Horn of Africa, in East Africa. UAE is there in Somaliland, built a port there. UAE built a port in Djibouti. UAE is building a port, I think, in Somalia as well. UAE is in Sudan too. It's not just Ethiopia. UAE wants to be a player. Saudi Arabia wants to be a player in this region. Why? Because they believe that they are global powers. Why is US here? Why did US mediate between TPLF and Ethiopian government? Why is US mediating between all Ethiopian government? US sees itself as a global power, which should have a global reach. Same is the case with the UAE, I think. So UAE wants to be here, but it should not be here at the cost of creating conflicts for people. And I am concerned about UAE's intervention in Sudan because pressure is mounting on UAE. And I fear that Ethiopia could be involved as well if the war in Sudan goes on and if RSF are in Wad Madani, Al Jazeera state now. And from there, RSF could make a move towards Ethiopian border, towards Blue Nile state, towards Gidaraf, towards Kisala. War could reach Ethiopian border. War could reach Eritrean border. Reports that Eritrea is training fighters in Kassala to protect in case of RSF's advance toward its border. Very alarming developments are happening in the neighboring country, which is Sudan. Ethiopia must be very careful. It should not be part of a conflict which has regional consequences. But you know what UAE did to Ethiopia in the 2-year-long war. UAE supported Ethiopian government. UAE provided drones, played a key role in the war. UAE is helping Ethiopian government now as well, and Ethiopian government is bound to reciprocate. How is it going to reciprocate? Is it going to take UAE's line when it comes to regional issues, which seems to be what is happening? So UAE's intervention in Ethiopia in the Horn of Africa, is it for constructive purposes? Has Ethiopia gained anything from this intervention? Ethiopia has gained weapons. It has got drones. That is what Ethiopia got. And secondly, we must not forget that both UAE and Ethiopia were left out of Red Sea Council established by Saudi Arabia. Both want to be relevant. Ethiopia, as you said, the new narrative launched by the Prime Minister, Ethiopia wants access to the Red Sea. UAE, though it's not a Red Sea country, but it wants to be relevant here. So both wants to show that they are relevant in this region. And other interests, so obviously UAE's the land leased in Ethiopia, in some other parts of Africa by UAE, by Saudi Arabia for crops. It is happening in Ethiopia as well. UAE has multiple interests, but question is, what is Ethiopia getting in return? Ethiopia is getting weapons. Ethiopia should get something for its people. UAE can pull Ethiopia out of financial crisis. $10 billion is not a big deal for UAE's government, but Ethiopia is in talks with IMF, World Bank for months. $7 billion bailout package not coming. Why can't Abiy talk to Mohammed bin Zayed for this bailout package? But Abiy wants to buy weapons from him. Weapon which he used against Tigray forces, now he could use against fighters in Amhara. The question about Ethiopia-Eritrea war, I don't see a war coming. When 2 months ago the Prime Minister spoke about access to the Red Sea, I concluded war was not imminent. Ethiopia cannot afford a new war at this point of time. There are so many internal problems that war cannot happen. But Ethiopia could prepare for this war. And that preparation is going to be costly. I mentioned what Ethiopia is purchasing. So even preparation for war is going to be very costly for Ethiopian people. Ethiopia needs a focus of the government on development, on eradication of poverty, on putting an end to droughts and feeding the people. But focus is on arming the military, whether it's a preparation to fight Eritrea or some internal groups. It's not clear, but priorities are not right. By the way, Eritrea cannot afford a war. There is no major threat to Eritrea from Ethiopia. The MRB issued some statements. It does not mean that Ethiopia is going to invade Eritrea. We were hoping that after Pretoria deal, maybe the indefinite national service conscription in Eritrea would come to an end, which is not ending. Why? Because the PMRB government issued some statements which created some insecurity in Eritrea. So peace is in the interest of the two countries. War is not coming, but we were hoping that after Pretoria we could see start of some economic integration between the two sides for regional cooperation. It is not happening. It won't happen. There is growing mistrust between Abiy and Isaias. So tensions set to continue, but no war, I think.
Oh, all right. Let's hope that there won't be any major military conflict or confrontation, particularly between these brotherly and sisterly nations. And if so, I hosted Professor Shetil Tromvol. I think you know him. Just a couple of 10 days ago on the same show, he said, well, if you are talking about economic issues and rationality, he said that has never deterred those dictators in the Horn of Africa. He said that irrespective of the crumbling economy and the rationality, the war has always been weighed. So I agree with your assessment that the last thing the Ethiopians wish to see is having another war at this point, including Abiy himself. From his point of view, even to consolidate his power and survive, I think Abiy cannot afford to wage any other war, provided that he will survive even the ongoing multiple wars. So let me bring you to the final question. If you have anything to say on what I've just said, you are free to add any points. But finally, do you see that these multiple groups in Ethiopia with diverging interests, the Ola, the Fano, to some extent the Ago people there, even the TDF, and other actors, right? Is there a possibility for them to unite and somehow try to topple the Abiy regime? Not necessarily toppling, but to put pressure and bring him to negotiation, or maybe to form some kind of transitional arrangement? Do you see that possibility? The possibility of uniting, first of all, one. Two, if they will be able to unite after all, then will there be any possibility of forcing the Abiy regime either to give up power or to negotiate?
Well, there is so mistrust between these groups that formation of an alliance does not seem possible. They have ethnic agendas, basically, whether you agree or disagree with the narratives. Their agendas are specific to the groups from which they are from. And they have acceptance in those groups only. I mean, Fano groups have acceptance in Amhara only, no acceptance in Oromia. Ola, no acceptance in Amhara. They have acceptance only in parts of Oromia. TDF, no acceptance in Oromia or in Amhara. These groups, they want to keep their support base happy. And when we say that leaders are very biased, groups are very biased in their ethnic loyalties, It's because of people as well. People don't accept that there should be an Amhara condemning what is happening to Oromos. There are a few people, and vice versa as well. I think Ethiopian people should also learn that all are Ethiopians. And after acknowledging that all are Ethiopians, then you can talk about common ground, which you mentioned, that can these groups reach a common ground. So far, their agendas are very different. Post Abiy Ethiopia, what should it be like? This is the question. How does Fano see post Abiy Ethiopia? How does Ola see post Abiy Ethiopia? Do they agree on this post Abiy scenario? I think they have different views about post Abiy Ethiopia. Maybe Fano fighters would want the parts of Oromia, parts of BG. Maybe Ola fighters would want a homogeneous Oromia. They would want Oromos to exercise Article 39. So, common ground is not possible between armed factions, I think, among armed factions. Common ground can only happen if government is generous, it shows big heart, it invites all the groups to the table, and then talks for a new Ethiopia start. If Ola, Fano join hands, don't you think there'll be groups opposing this alliance? You will see groups emerge in Oromia. You'll see groups emerge in other parts of Ethiopia. So you'll see more complication. I think this is not the way forward. Two groups, if they decide to make alliance, they cannot build a better, stronger Ethiopia. Ethiopia needs more than that, I think, not just alliance of a few groups.
Yeah, that's great. I think we can say we can tentatively agree that the lack of trust or deep mistrust as coupled with divergence of interests among this group makes it very hard, if not impossible, to cooperate from the outset, and particularly their view about the Ethiopia's post-Abiy Ethiopia. Yeah. So, but Mr. Ledet was actually just released a paper a day ago. I mean, a couple of days ago, if you know that. He said Ethiopia has long passed a crossroads. There is only one way. Ethiopia is on the brink of disintegration if this group and other political groups are not somehow, he said, postponing their pressing issues and try to save Ethiopia first. And well, my question to him yesterday was saying that on what minimum agenda, like you said, on what minimum agenda are they going to cooperate? And even if they cooperate, what strategies are they going to deploy to pursue that goal? But it remains to be seen. Some people are so hopeful that there would be some kind of alliance between this divergent group. But for me, I think it is very difficult for now to see that happening. But it could be a bit theoretical, idealistic. That said, I don't want to hold you forever here. Of course, I'm compensating the last 15 minutes for the time we lost at the beginning with the internet. And luckily, then your internet becomes very generous once we started off. So I have addressed most of my question. I would love to stay here for 3 or 4 hours with you, but as we agreed for a short and brief time, if you have any final thoughts or outstanding issues, or you need to add on, or maybe if you would like to give us any takeaway for today from this show, the floor is yours, Sajid.
Thank you for inviting me, brother. It was a pleasure to be here. But I would just say a few words that keeping aside ethnic loyalties, religious affiliations, we should condemn when something bad happens in Ethiopia. If people die, no matter they are Tigrayans, Oromos, Amharas, it should be condemned. If there is wrong being committed, crime being committed against people, no matter who they are, we should condemn it. People on their own level will also try to bring about a change. They can bring about a change. We should not just criticize governments. Yes, governments are not delivering, but people, on the other hand, should not blindly support their groups from where they are. They should work for a better, stronger, and cohesive Ethiopia. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is mutual. But before you leave, I would like to seize this moment and invite all our viewers today and those who are going to view our show afterwards to go and visit your channel, which is My Views on News, which has 74.1 thousand subscribers. And this is Sajid's official YouTube channel, where he provides real information as well as current analysis on the issues of Ethiopian conflict, Eritrea, and generally on the Horn of Africa. So please do subscribe, support him, follow him. If you have any question, don't forget to put them in the comment section or send us via an email, then I will forward it to Mr. Sajid, and maybe we can do a rejoinder sometime later. So it was a pleasure to have you. And finally, it worked out, Sajid. I was so frustrated at the beginning with the internet. And maybe just one thing, there are a lot of people who confuse that you are an Ethiopian. Have you ever come across that? Because I saw 4 or 5 people saying, is he from Ethiopia?
Yeah. People say you're from Ethiopia. Some say you're from Eritrea, but I'm from Pakistan.
All right. So it seems that we are really brothers, and in not only in ideas but in look as well. So I wish you all the best for you and for your family and the people of Pakistan. And I wish you success in the new year. Thank you very much for being with me. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the end of our show for today. It is Ethiopia Today show, where I have a conversation with Mr. Sajid Nadeem on current issues of Ethiopia and the Greater Horn of Africa. Have a blessed day, and I will see you soon with other programs tomorrow. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
የሐሳብ ገበታ ሐሳብ ያለ ልዩነት ሚዛናዊነት እንዲሁም በአሳታፊነት የሚንሸራሸርበት ቤት። በሐሳብ ገበታችን ወቅታዊ፣ ማህበራዊ፣ ፖለቲካዊ እንዲሁም የህግ ጉዳዮች በስፋት በጥልቀትና በአካታችነት ይቀርባሉ። የሳምንቱ እንግዳም የሳምንቱ በተጋባዥ ማህበረሰብ አንቂዎች፣ ፖለቲከኞች እንዲሁም ሙያተኞች የሚቀርቡበት ፕሮግራም። ወቅታዊ ጉዳይ፣ ወቅታዊ ሀገራዊ ጉዳዮች የሚዳሰሱበት ዝግጅት፣ የውይይትና የክርክር መድረክ። በተለያየ ጎራ የሚገኙ ታላላቅ ፖለቲከኞች፣ የማህበረሰብ አንቂዎች እንዲሁም ሙያተኞች በሐሳብ ዙሪያ ፊት ለፊት የሚወያዩበት ከዛም አልፎ የሚሟገቱበት ፕሮግራም። ህዝባዊ መድረክ። በተለያዩ ጉዳዮች ላይ ሁሉም የሐሳብ ገበታ ቤተሰቦች በቀጥታ ሐሳባቸውን የሚያቀርቡበትና ተሳታፊ የሚሆኑበት ለቤተሰቦቻችን እድል የምንሰጥበት ጊዜም። እነዚህና ሌሎች ሳምንታዊ ፕሮግራሞችን ለእናንተ እናቀርባለን። ይህንን የተወደደ ቻናል ሰብስክራይብ በማድረግ ቤተሰብ ይሁኑ፣ በስፋት ተደራሽ እንዲሁም ለሌሎች ያጋሩም። የሐሳብ ገበታው እንዲጠናከር በተሻለ ጥራትና ስፋት ወደ እናንተ እንዲደርስ በሐሳቦ በሙያውና በገንዘቡ ይደግፉን። የሐሳብ ገበታን በሱፐር ቻት፣ በሱፐር ታንክስና በሱፐር ስቲከር አጋርነቱን ያሳዩን። በጎፈንድሚ አማራጭ የሐሳብ ገበታን ያበረታቱ። ስለ ሐሳብ አስተያየቶ እንዲሁም ድጋፎም እናመሰግናለን። ዓላማችን የሐሳብ ማህበረሰብ መፍጠር ነው። የሐሳብ